Imagine this. It's 2004. You walk into a bright blue and yellow store. Shelves packed with DVDs. People everywhere. Blockbuster at its absolute peak. More than 9,000 stores, 60 million people renting every month, and a yearly revenue bigger than some Hollywood studios. Everything looked perfect from the outside. But the truth? This company was already standing on a trapdoor it built for itself. Most businesses fall because competitors outsmart them. Blockbuster fell because it made every wrong decision at exactly the right moment, while holding every advantage it needed to win. That's the tragedy. The company had brand power, market dominance, money, and millions of loyal customers. And still, it collapsed faster than anyone expected. To understand how, you have to go back to the early 2000s, when renting movies wasn't just an option in America, it was a ritual. Friday nights meant driving to Blockbuster, picking a movie, buying some popcorn, and heading back home. It was embedded in American culture. If you lived in the US during that time, you didn't rent a movie, you blockbustered it. And because of that domination, Blockbuster became blind. Success made them feel invincible. When a tiny company called Netflix launched a DVD by mail service, Blockbuster didn't just underestimate them, they dismissed them entirely. Why would anyone wait for DVDs to arrive by mail when you could instantly walk into a store and grab one? That was Blockbuster's mindset. And that mindset was their first major mistake. Inside the company, there was another hidden problem, one they didn't want to fix. A huge portion of Blockbuster's revenue came from late fees, around 16%. Customers hated it, but Blockbuster loved the money. So when Netflix announced no late fees, millions of frustrated customers finally had a reason to switch. Then came the moment that could have changed history. In the year 2000, Netflix approached Blockbuster with an offer. Buy us for $50 million. Blockbuster laughed. They genuinely believed Netflix was a small, unscalable, low-potential idea. They saw no threat. They saw no future. They walked away from the deal. That decision is now considered one of the biggest blunders in business. By the mid-2000s, the cracks inside Blockbuster were growing. Their leadership was built for retail, not technology. They didn't understand data. They didn't understand convenience. They didn't understand how the internet was about to reshape entertainment permanently. But from the outside, the average American had no idea a collapse was coming. The stores were still full. The brand was still strong. The money was still flowing. What they didn't see was the panic building behind the scenes. Because Netflix was about to enter a new phase, and Blockbuster was completely unprepared. By the time Netflix started gaining traction, Blockbuster was still living in the past. Their stores were running well, rentals were steady, late fees were still pouring in money. But technology doesn't care about how successful you were yesterday. While Blockbuster kept polishing its physical stores, Netflix was quietly investing in something far more powerful: data. They built algorithms that understood what people liked, what they watched, and what they were most likely to rent next. That level of personalization wasn't just smart, it was the future of entertainment. Blockbuster never saw it coming. And when they finally realized the threat, their response was slow, confused, and full of internal politics. Executives weren't aligned. Some wanted to protect the stores. Some wanted to go digital. Some were terrified that online rentals would kill the late fee money machine. This internal tug-of-war wasted years. While Netflix had one mission, Blockbuster had 5 conflicting ones. And a company fighting inside its walls can't compete with a company laser-focused on the future. Then came the biggest turning point: streaming. Around 2007, Netflix introduced instant streaming, movies and shows that played with a click. No waiting, no returning, no late fees. The moment streaming launched, Blockbuster should have gone into survival mode. But they didn't. Their entire business model was built around stores, physical DVDs, inventory management, and fees. Streaming made all of that obsolete. Blockbuster tried to respond. They launched Blockbuster Online, then the Blockbuster Total Access program. Eventually, they introduced their own streaming service. But every move came too late. Customers had already moved on. Netflix had already become the new habit. And here's the brutal part. Blockbuster wasn't just losing customers. It was losing the battle of perception. Netflix felt modern. Blockbuster felt old. Netflix felt effortless. Blockbuster felt inconvenient. Netflix felt like the future. Blockbuster felt nostalgia. Once a brand becomes the past, the game is over. By 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. A company that once dominated American entertainment collapsed under the weight of its own decisions. Not because it lacked money, not because competitors were stronger, but because it refused to change when it had the chance. Ironically, that tiny $50 million Netflix they laughed at would soon grow into a company worth more than $200 billion. And Blockbuster? Reduced to a single store in Bend, Oregon, a living reminder of what happens when a giant sleeps through a revolution. After the bankruptcy, many people assumed Blockbuster simply lost because Netflix was better. That's too simplistic. The real story is harsher. Blockbuster had multiple opportunities to win, and they wasted every single one. Years before streaming exploded, Blockbuster had a chance to dominate the digital space. They had the money. They had brand power. They had millions of customers who trusted them. All they needed was a clear vision. Instead, they kept doubling down on the old system: huge stores, physical DVDs, and late fees. It was a business model built for the 90s, and they tried to drag it into the 2000s unchanged. Even when they finally attempted to compete with Netflix through Blockbuster Total Access, the idea was actually strong. The program allowed people to rent DVDs online and return them in-store. For a moment, it looked like Blockbuster might actually catch up. But inside the company, leadership changed again. The new CEO slashed budgets. The digital team that was finally pushing Blockbuster into the future lost support. Total Access was slowed down, weakened, and eventually suffocated. Netflix kept moving. Blockbuster kept hesitating. Then the 2008 financial crisis hit. People cut expenses. Physical rentals dropped. Online consumption skyrocketed. Streaming wasn't just convenient anymore, it became the default. Blockbuster never recovered. By the time they tried to revive the brand, Netflix had turned into a monster, expanding into streaming, original shows, massive data systems, and global presence. Competing at that point was impossible. What makes Blockbuster's story unique isn't just the fall, it's how preventable it was. They had the audience. They had the infrastructure. They had first-mover advantage. They had a chance to buy their biggest competitor for pocket change. But they failed at one thing: recognizing that success doesn't last if you don't evolve. Blockbuster didn't lose because customers changed. Blockbuster lost because it refused to change with them. From a cultural icon to a cautionary tale, Blockbuster's downfall has now become a case study in business schools, tech companies, and startup ecosystems across the world. A brand that once defined Friday nights in America now survives as a single nostalgic store, reminding everyone what happens when you ignore the future staring you in the face. As Blockbuster faded, something interesting happened. People didn't just lose a store, they lost a part of American culture. For decades, Blockbuster shaped how families spent time together. The smell of popcorn packets, the aisles filled with new releases, the feeling of picking the perfect Friday night movie. It wasn't just a rental store, it was an experience. But nostalgia can't save a business. What matters is whether a company adapts when the world changes. And Blockbuster didn't. Meanwhile, Netflix evolved faster than anyone expected. It didn't stop at DVDs or streaming. It went deeper. Original shows, global expansion, mobile apps, personalized recommendations, binge-watching culture. Netflix built an entire ecosystem. Blockbuster, on the other hand, stayed stuck in a world that no longer existed. What happened next was predictable. Netflix redefined entertainment. Blockbuster became a memory. Today, the last remaining Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon, survives more like a monument than a business, a time capsule of what once was. People visited for photos, nostalgia, and the reminder of an era when picking a movie meant something physical, something shared. But nostalgia can't save a business. What matters is whether a company adapts when the world changes. And Blockbuster didn't. Meanwhile, Netflix evolved faster than anyone expected. It didn't stop at DVDs or streaming. It went deeper. Original shows, global expansion, mobile apps, personalized recommendations, binge-watching culture. Netflix built an entire ecosystem. Blockbuster, on the other hand, stayed stuck in a world that no longer existed. What happened next was predictable. Netflix redefined entertainment. Blockbuster became a memory. Today, the last remaining Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon, survives more like a monument than a business, a time capsule of what once was. People visit it for photos, nostalgia, and the reminder of an era when picking a movie meant something physical, something shared. But behind the nostalgia lies the real lesson, a lesson every entrepreneur, CEO, and creator needs to understand. Success is not protection. Market leadership is not insurance. If anything, being on top makes you more vulnerable. The world doesn't slow down for giants. Technology doesn't wait for old business models to catch up. And customers don't stay loyal if someone else offers a better experience. Blockbuster had everything it needed to win: money, brand power, distribution, customer loyalty. But it lacked the one thing that matters most in business: the willingness to reinvent itself. That is why a $5 billion empire collapsed, and a tiny mail-order startup became a global powerhouse. In the end, Blockbuster didn't die because Netflix was smarter. Blockbuster died because it refused to evolve when it had every chance to do so. The rise of Blockbuster shows how powerful a company can become. Its fall shows how fast power disappears when a business stops learning. And that is the real takeaway.